Good Yontiv, good Yontiv. Today is Yud Gimel Tammuz, one of the days which is the Chag HaGeula of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. In 1927, he finally was released from his prison and his exile and was a completely free man to continue his activities in spreading Yiddishkeit. And this day, he himself declared as a Yontif, not only for himself and not only for his Hasidim, but for the entire Jewish people. So today we'll speak a bit about Yud Beis, Yud Gimel Tammuz, which I must confess, the Frierdiker Rebbe for me personally is one of my greatest superheroes that inspires me to no end till this very day. And we'll speak about that hopefully a bit later. This week's Parshas is Parshas Balak, and we have to see the connection between Parshas Balak and Yud Beis Tammuz. There's many connections, and we spoke last year and earlier years a more direct connection, but this week we'll speak about another connection. But first we'll start with one of the most famous verses from this week's Parsha, which we say every single day. And for those of us who are Lubavitcher Chassidim, and we say the Pesukim connected to the Rebbe's name, the name the Pasuk Matoivu Elecha Yaakov, Mishkan Yisecha Yisrael, is connected to the name Mendel. So we say it every single day, 3 times a day, in addition to what we say it in Shachas. We say it by Shemona Esrei Shachas, besides for right away at the beginning of davening. So Matoivu Elecha Yaakov, Mishkan Yisecha Yisrael. How goodly are your tents, O Yaakov, your dwelling places, O Yisrael. So right away we have one very famous pshat from Rashi. Immediately, what does it mean that Bilam says that this is a praise, a great praise for the Jewish nation? Matoivu elecha al shera pischayim she'einem mechuvanim zeh mul zeh. He said this, Bilam said this, because he saw that the entrances of the tents were not facing each other. So here we see immediately how Judaism, as usual, is thousands and thousands of miles ahead everyone else in all of the disciplines and religions. Here we see a pasuk that talks about safe space, modesty, private space. The simple meaning over there means that their openings were not facing each other, so one wasn't looking voyeur into the next person's family, into the next person's life. They weren't jealous, they didn't say anything immodest, etc. And also we know there's Masechtas Bava Basra that talks about Hezekiah and how much distance you have to have from one property to another property. So we have all these laws that even just recently, when COVID was going on, there was safe space, physically, medically speaking. You know, you have to respect each person. And I don't know if you remember, I feel like laughing right now when I'm thinking about what I've just now put into my mind, what the post office looked like, what the drugstore chemist looked like. They had it actually measured for each person, how much space and how many people could occupy the store at a certain time. I don't know what was going on in America, but this was going on in Melbourne. So from just like we see medically that there was what's considered safe space, so too could you imagine what that means psychologically. Each person has to feel secure. And it also brings out respect. Respect the other person's space. Don't breathe on another person. Don't talk so loudly or hum or sing that your singing or your noise affects the other person. And Kol Shkeim Kal V'Chem, as we just said, psychologically, safe space. Today we can have a school or a business office, any sort of environment. And one of the main key factors that they're going to mention is it's a safe space. So Matoivu Elecha Yaakov Mishkan Yisecha Yisrael. According to Rashi, the main thing we said that the doors are not open one to the other. We're not invading each other's space. We see safe space straight away. Another pshat obviously is Matoivu Elecha Yaakov Mishkan Yisecha Yisrael. It goes on Bate Knesiyos, Bate Midrashos, Ole Shel Yaakov, Ole Torah. The tent of Torah, Kol Kol Yaakov, that even if we're sent into Golus, even though we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, Matoivu Elecha Yaakov, Mishkinisechi Yisrael, we have Bati Midrashis and Bati Knisiyos, where people are davening and learning, and this is the power of the Jewish nation. And this is another message that Bilam is saying, that whatever we're going to accomplish throughout all of eternity and history, the Jew will remain. Even if Chas v'Shalom is a situation where the Beis HaMikdash itself is destroyed, and you think that signifies a certain departure, Chas v'Shalom, of the Shekhinah. No, the Shekhinah is still here, Gadol Edom, Shekhinah Imayim, and in particular through Ole Shel Teira, Ole Shel Tefillah, Bati Knisiyos and Bati Midrashis. Ma'toivu Elecha Yaakov. Okay, today I'm going to repeat a Sikha, which is in Chelik Beis. It's 2 pages. This is one of the most profound, awesome things about some of the Rebbe Sikhas in Chelik Aleph and Beis, that they seem so simplistic, and yet they contain the very, very wisdom of life. For example, the Sikha this week, the Rebbe says about, he brings from Shimshla Astropolia, that I should have made a diagram. You have a Beis that he brought out that the word Bilam, which is talking about in this week's Parsha, Bilam and Amalek are connected. How are Bilam and Amalek connected? Bilam is spelled Beis Lamed Ayin Mem. Under that, put the word Amalek, Ayin Mem Lamed Kuf. So if you have one under the other, the first 2 letters of the right are Bilam, yeah? So that's Beis Lamed on top, from the word Bilam. We put it with the word Amalek, and the Beis Lamed on the top joins the Ayin Mem on the bottom, and it gets Bilam. So we see how Bilam and Amalek are intertwined. And the same thing, if we take the second 2 letters of the first word, Ayin Mem, of the top word Bilam, we join it with the last 2 letters of the word Amalek, Lamed Kuf. So Ayin Mem from the top of Bilam with the Lamed Kuf of Amalek gives us Amalek. So we see how Bilam and Amalek are connected. He also, Shimshas Astropolia, said that this is also connected with another 2 words that go together, Ava and Yira. Yira and Ava, Yira and Ava. We write Yira on top, Ava on the bottom. So what happens, we take the first 2 letters of Yira, Yud Reish, place it with the first 2 letters of Ava, Ayin Hey, and what do you get? Yira. Take the second 2 letters of Yira, Aleph Hey, and connect it with the second 2 letters of Ava, and what do we get? Ava. So we see how Bilam and Amalek are intertwined, and Yira and Ava are intertwined. What is the lesson in this? And the Rebbe says the lesson in this is actually the solution, the answer to one of the most perplexing, difficult questions that any true seeker of Hashem, a searcher for spirituality and for truth has. And that is, how do you know you're on the right side? How do you know you're doing the right thing? Does a person know every single time that he's doing the right thing? Maybe he's biased. Maybe he's blind. Things get in the way, as we'll soon explain. So this is in general, we say there's 2 problems a person has. Number 1, knowing what the right thing is, knowing what the right thing to do. And number 2, even after you know that it's the right thing, to actually do it. Each one is a problem in itself, and sometimes the first part is a much more difficult problem. It's very hard to know which is the right way, sometimes. And sometimes the second part is much harder. Like, okay, I know what I have to do, but doing it is very difficult. It's easy to talk about it, but to actually do it is difficult. And herein, in this Torah, in this word, that Bilam and Amalek are connected, and Yira and Ava are connected, we have the answer to the whole thing. And what is that? That when a person doesn't know what to do, First you have to realize how careful you have to be. Being on guard. Like morality alertness. In other words, the attack, the reasoning, the logic will come from all sides, and especially in a form of Kedusha. And that is what the Rebbe says, is the connection between Bilam and Amalek. Amalek comes first in the Torah. So there's Bilam and Amalek. Amalek comes from Esav. What is Esav? Esav is a child of Yitzchak and an Einekul of Avraham. And he comes along and he says, hello, you got to listen to me. Yichab Yichos. I come from Shmitz Chabad. I know what I'm talking about. You're telling me? Who are you, Bechlal? I know it all. I saw it all. I was brought up in the presence of Avram Avinu. I know all about Avram and all about Yitzchak Avinu. I know about both of two of the others. Guess what? I can tell you about Yaakov too. I lived with him for many years together. So you're telling me? So that's what Amalek comes along. He starts coming along. Like they say, the gates of Terutzim never close. He can come along with who knows what kind of arguments. And Ungiton enclosed in who knows what kind of Judaism. It's against the Jewish character to occupy the Jewish state. It goes against the Jewish kindness. Or today, the whole Mishagas with Tikkun Olam. I don't want to get into it now. In the name of Tikkun Olam, don't have children. Because having children will populate the earth more. We don't have the resources. Chas v'sholem v'chas v'sholem. You can be metaretz a sheretz b'kufton taimen. The point that Rebbe is making is that Amalek comes from Esav and Bilam comes from Lavan. And who is Lavan? Lavan is the Gzeide from Gans Klal Yisrael. He says, from Rachel and Leah, all the major Shvatim. He's the grandfather. Habanim Banai V'Abnei Sai. He says, all your children belong to me. He wants to educate them with the secular way and the modern way. And he says, Torah says, you should first get a job, then you should get married. Whatever it is he's going to say. And that's the danger. You have to know that there's always going to be somebody who says he comes from Grace and Yichos. He saw it all. He could tell you better than you how these tzaddikim conducted themselves. He could write a biography, he could write a biography about these people. So therefore, what he meant to do, and the answer that Rabbi gives over here is Yira and Ava. First, you have to have the word Yira on top, and then you have the word Ava, which means you have to know, is this what the Eibishter wants or not? When a person's whole life is based on Nasa Kodim L'Nishma, Kabbalah Seil Malchus Shamayim, he has Yiras Hashem, like the Alter Rebbe says, Reishis Ha'avodah V'ikra V'shasha, and Yerosei Kedemes L'Chachmasei. He's worried. He's always super careful that he should do nothing which is not 100% in accordance with the Eibishter wants. I've said this lately a lot, and I see it more and more. So many things boil down to it. It's a yes or no question. Is this in accordance with the Shulchan Aruch, or it's not in accordance with the Shulchan Aruch? If it's in accordance with the Shulchan Aruch, then no problem. If it's not in accordance with the Shulchan Aruch, forget about it. It's completely negated. And this is what the Rebbe says. If your life is based on Yiras Shamayim, Reishis, Ha'avodah V'ikra V'shosha, starts with Yira. First comes the word Yira, because Yira represents more bittul, less ego, less your own agenda, less your own bias. And also Ava. But like the Alter Rebbe writes in chapter 4 of Tanya, what does Ava mean? Ava means that the true person who loves the Eibishter wants to do what the Eibishter wants. As the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe in chapter 4 of the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe writes that the Ava is the source of all the Ramachas say, Ki ha'makayim be'emes hu ha'oyev Hashem Hashem v'chafetz l'davka boi be'emes. You love Hashem, so therefore you'll do what He wants, the way He wants it done. But why does Yira have to be first? Because by the nature, as Chassidus paraphrase the Lashon Alter Rebbe, when love feels good. Love feels good. When a person has Avos Hashem, he feels good. And from that could evolve something called Yesh Misha Oyev. There's more of a sense of self when a person is feeling good. Because when you're full of passion and love for Hashem, it feels good. Like these people that talk about the love and the love. But Yirah is more about the discipline. You might not feel it. You ain't feeling it necessarily with the Ava, but still, you wouldn't dare step out of line because you know that everything in the whole entire relationship is based upon His terms, the way Hashem said to do. And you have that Yirah. Therefore, Yirah comes first. Yirah kedems l'chachmosei. Because Yirah is more a sense of bittul, a sense of other-orientated, other Hashem, less yourself. So that is the main point. And I'm sure I mentioned this once before. There's an unbelievable, phenomenal Torah from the Baal Shem Tov, which really boils down to the same thing. And I'm sure I mentioned it before. I can't remember when, maybe a couple of years ago, but not in a very, very long time. And that's in Keser Shem Tov, Ois Vov. The Baal Shem Tov says something so fundamental to life. And he says, it's the pasuk in where it says about Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Va'davar yikshe mikem takriv melai." He was talking about the Dayanim. They have to be the judges, or they have to deal with cases. But if there's something that's still going to be difficult, then bring it to me. But the Baal Shem Tov ties it up like this, talking about every single person. What does it mean? He says it b'shem HaRamban. In Keser Shem Tov, he brings it in the name of the Ramban. That the Ramban told his son, if you will have a doubt how to do something when you have two paths, litkan or lakan, or you have a suffix, if this is a mitzvah or not, or you should do something or not do something, and you might even think how you're going to find ways to make something permissible. So the first thing you have to do is kedem kol salik me'esek dover zeh hanoas atzmcha or kvedecha. Depersonalize. Take your enjoyment out of the equation, or your respect, glory, ego. V'achach tireh, and then you will see to which way to go, and Hashem will let you know the truth, and you'll be able to be secure. Teilach lebetach. And now he says, this is the meaning of the words, Va'davar yikshe. The only reason why you're having a difficulty, mikem. The reason why the reason you don't know what to do or not to do. Hasofik noiled mikem. You're stuck in it. Your self, your ego, your agenda. Sheyesh bo hanaschem. You're deriving some benefit in a certain decision. So al kein tesalik midover zeh hanaschem. Take away whatever hana benefit you will gain. The takrivon lie, bring it to me, to Hashem. Think purely in terms of objective, the mission, the purpose. So stimmt al pitera, tzin it. And then v'akavona shir l'shem shamayim b'lishum pniya v'ana, when there'll be no self-interests or benefit. Oh, so shmaitiv. Then you will hear how you should conduct yourself. And this we see time and time again. And I'm speaking to myself. You could give so many case scenarios. You could be a fundraiser for a moisid. Let's say, now everybody in the moisid is thinking of development and expansion. But every single time there's a meeting and a discussion about how we have to do this and we have to do this and we should expand and it will be great and it will be amazing. You, who's the fundraiser, voices an objection. We have to be more careful how we spend money. I have to save the moisid money. Yeah, you don't realize the only reason why every single time, bar none, that we spoke about making advancement and development, you're always voicing an objection. You know why? because you're going to have to work harder. So therefore, to vote, to work harder or not work harder, i.e., you lose out of it, so you always vote not to raise more money. And now all of a sudden it comes with a levush al kedusha, because you're talking about how we have to save money for the mosid. The same thing could be a person whose job is to be a mashgiach, a policeman, call it whatever you want. And he has to enforce that there's certain rules that are meant to be followed. Every time the discussion comes up about this person did this and this person did this, and he starts coming up with the excuses. The reason he didn't show up to learning today is because he didn't sleep enough. The reason he failed the test, okay, fine, you could do it once or twice. But the real reason behind it, why every single time you're looking for excuses, has nothing to do with Kedusha. Because we have to look positive. That's someone else's job. That's the lawyer's job. That's the mashpia's job. Your job is to actually make sure there's law and order. There's some discipline. Because what happens if there's no discipline and the policemen or the judges become one big lekaf schus person? So that's what you get, is anarchy. Everybody does what they want. Literally. And it's the same thing, just like that fundraiser every single time. We spoke about talking about raising money. He always says the reason why not. And it's always connected to Kedusha. It's the same thing over here. The person who's meant to be the one who is making control and discipline comes up every single time with different reasonings or excuses why the person did a bad thing. Beautiful, it's great, but this is going to make a situation which is totally out of control. And the reason why he's saying this is because you work less. Because if we say that we have to do something about it, now you have to follow up, you have to do this, you have to do that. And it's a lot more hard work. Therefore, just better say, he's tired, he has headache, they went away, he didn't realize what he was doing. Then the bottom line from every one of these things is you have to do nothing. Fantastic, beautiful. And the same thing is, this is also connected with that Yom Yom of Chav Gimel 7, similar point. Yes or no question, what's going to come out of this logic that's right now in your head? Will more activity come out? The net result. Will we see more outcomes, more produce, harder work, more work, or not? See Hayom Yom 23rd of Sivan, which is a famous story that brings out that point. So here we see the lesson and the advice, and this is the same point, just like the word of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Baal Shem Tov says, "Takrin elai," take your ego out of it. And when you take your ego out of it, or your personal benefit out of it, then you'll come to the truth. It's the same thing over here. Bilam and Amalek, when someone's going to come along and say who knows what, and it's coming from a certain source and it seems like it's connected to Judaism, remember, the answer is Yireh v'Ava. Is it based on true Yiras Hashem? Then you won't step out of line. Like Ein Megalan Rosi Teile El Mishadayigli Bibekirbai. Somebody who's permeated with the fear of Hashem, and he's a loyal servant and subject of the king, will never step out of line. He's too scared to step out of line, out of reverence, and it means so much to him, etc., that it wouldn't be possible. His whole life is based on Yireh and also Ava, that he's Mekayim and Be'emes, and therefore he does what the Eibishter wants. And that's the solution. Similar idea. That it's not about you at all, it's not about your ego. And also the Rebbe brings out, I think, over there in the Sikh and Cheli Beis, that, sometimes somebody comes up with an idea. This is very much in the business world. People tell me about this. And they have always a colleague, whatever that person says, that other person always has an opposite opinion. You know why? Because it wasn't his idea. If something's his idea, and everyone has this nature, when something's your idea, you get very excited about it. It's good, it's great, it's beautiful. Why? It's my idea. It's geschmack. You don't want to give up on your idea so quickly. When it's the other guy's idea, you easily knock it and say, nothing. So again, what's clouding your judgment? What's clouding your clarity? Your ego, or your benefit, your enjoyment, etc. Exactly like the word of the Shem Tov, Keser Shem Tov, Oizvav, see there. And now I want to connect it to Yud Beis Tammuz and tell you some stories about Russia. In Yud Beis Tammuz, the Rebbe discusses in many sichas what was the uftu. Oh, I just realized, my friends, I didn't give tzedakah today. The last couple of months, we gave tzedakah and we said a prayer. So I'm giving the tzedakah now because every single mitzvah could change everything. One mitzvah. So here's tzedakah for the matzav in Eretz Yisrael. Mashiach should come now. G'del tzedakah shemakarev v'sagula. The Rebbe explains in many sichas about the Mesiras Nefesh of the Friedrich Rebbe. We're talking now about the 20s in Russia, and the story of Beis Tammuz in 1927, that the Friedrich Rebbe realized that this was a threat against Judaism. He was so connected with the Yira and Ava, like only a true tzaddik could be connected, that therefore he knew what was the right thing. It doesn't make a difference where it's coming from. By the way, I just recently saw another video getting back to this Bilam and Amalek coming from holiness. I should have said this before. I saw a video of the Rebbe recently where somebody's talking to the Rebbe and he's talking about how he's helping Chabad, and the Rebbe tells me, you speak like an outsider. Are you a chassid? And he says he's a chassid, and he says that he stams from chassidim. He says he comes from kedoshim. So the Rebbe tells this person sometimes, by a benam shel kedoshim, that's what the Rebbe says, because it's a famous expression, banshak, it's a Rosh Tevis, benam shel kedoshim. By a benam shel kedoshim is amol shver zu peil sein, wer nach chassid. The Rebbe tells him by a benam shel kedoshim, it's sometimes even more difficult to make them a true chassid. But a mahalta zed is הקודש. He thinks he's holy. That's what the Rebbe is saying over here with Lavan and Esav and Bilam and Amalek. They can come along with who knows what kind of arguments, all couched in terms of holiness. But really, it's all about distracting. And I looked up the Sikha in the original. Over there, the Rebbe says, and also, again, similar to what I said before, that what's both Amalek and both Bilam, they come before the next level. Amalek is trying to prevent the Yidden, like getting out of Mitzrayim, like that stage in their life. That's when Amalek attacks them, right after Kriyas Yamsuf. That's one story of Amalek. And Bilam is before the Yidden are going to go into Eretz Yisrael, after the 40 years in the Midbar. So whenever there's a major step forward, advancement, there's an Amalek or there's a Bilam that comes forth, they're scared, they're getting cold feet, whatever the reason is, and then we come up with all sorts of arguments that theoretically are couched in a language of holiness. And you have to be connected to Kedusha in the right way, Yira first, and then Ava and Bittul, and then you'll come to the right Maskana. And this was the Friedrich Rebbe. He was a lone man, different than other great leaders at that time, who was the only person who inspired an entire country with his followers all over the country in different cities to fight for Yiddishkeit. I went to Russia in 1986 when it didn't fall, the Soviet Union did not fall yet, and there was just talk of glasnost and perestroika. And I could tell you some things that inspired me even then. 1980, it was 1986. That's like 60 years after the events of 1927. And one person, his name was Folina Moiten, and he told me, you cannot imagine what it was like in those years. People were scared to breathe. But Meiregat Etemen. If you said hello to the wrong person, then the government would say that you passed on state secrets to that person, or that person who was considered a suspect of counter-revolutionary activities because he was involved in spreading Yiddishkeit, and he said good morning to you and you answered good morning, that person could be sent to prison or shot, and then you, because you spoke to him, would be suspected and wrongly convicted, of course, and forced to confess under torture that you were discussing things that were against the government. So he used the words, we were scared to breathe. And when I went there, we were giving Torah classes. I went to Leningrad, Tbilisi, Moscow, Odessa. And wherever I went, we used to give a class, let's say for 2 hours. Straight up 2 hour shir, in Chassidus, Tanya, Gemara. 2 hours, 2.5 hours after the shir, we used to speak in Hebrew. They would say, Haim yesh lecha od ma lagid? They would say, do you have anything more to say? So here we're sitting in a session, and we're going for 2 hours plus. I'm already feeling exhausted. They want more. They hang on to every word. Some of these people took off work, whatever work they were still allowed to do, because they knew that there's going to be a shliach from Ezras Achem that's going to come to Russia. And these Jews that I met, Reb Getcher, the legendary Reb Getcher, Reb Grisha, these were all people that were either themselves chassidim from the previous Rebbe's times, that were still on fire through the inspiration of the Frierdiker Rebbe, or they were the students and disciples that were influenced by these chassidim of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that they were still burning and inspiring and influencing based on the instructions and the inspiration that they received from the Frierdiker Rebbe. I met a couple there who told me that if he knew for sure that his children would be able to go through customs, he would drill holes in one suitcase, put 2 of his children in the suitcase, and send them with me back to the United States of America. He's willing to just get his children out of the country and never see them again. At that time, that's what he thought. Just so that they should have a life where they could learn Torah freely. The Rebbe said many times that the lesson that we have to take on Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz is that we're living in a free country. I just read an interview, by the way, that I never read before, of the Frierdiker Rebbe. In 1930, he was interviewed. And the Frierdiker Rebbe just says, wow, I can't understand it. How you people are living in a free country and you have so much time in your hands and people are not learning enough. And he says, where I come from in Russia and in different countries, we're not living in democracies and lands of freedom. And every single person, a simple pashta mensch, a regular layman is thirsty and hungry and he wants to learn. And over here, everyone's just chasing the dollar. I can't believe it that you have this freedom. What are we doing with this freedom? So the Rebbe would always say that we're living in free countries. What's Mesiras Nefesh for us? That we couldn't get Tropicana orange juice. What's Mesiras Nefesh to us? That the Wi-Fi is not working. What's Mesiras Nefesh to us? That you blew a fuse in the house and for one night something wasn't working properly. We have to give, first of all, a Shavua V'Idol HaKodesh Baruch Hu, that we live in free countries and we're each able to be good soldiers to spread the word of Afatzas Hamayonis Chutza. And we should dedicate ourselves in a day of Yud Beis Tammuz to serve others, to try to inspire others, to connect to Yiddishkeit, to promote Yiddishkeit. We should be proud Jews. And we should continue doing the work of the Frierdiker Rebbe that they did in circumstances where people were tortured and shot and executed. Hashem Yirachem. So the Eibusher should help that in the schus of the Baal HaGeula, the Frierdiker Rebbe, who inspired us and continues to inspire us till this very day, as he himself said, that the first principle in Avodas HaKlal is Azoi Unitandish. That's what his father taught him. And that's what he made sure to repeat many times. And this is why I said before, now it's already too late, so I'm going to finish. So many times, it's like a yes or no question. Like, for example, today, yes or no question. Is this in accordance with Shulchan Aruch? Yes or no question. Is this going to bring more results? Yes or no question. Is this going to make Yiddishkeit stronger? Is this going to improve the overall conditions? So this is what it means, azoi unitanish. There's a reason why the Frierdiker Rebbe said the first principle, the most important principle of all of spreading of Judaism and Judaism awareness and keeping Judaism alive is the principle of azoi unitanish, which means zero compromise. The truth is the truth is the truth. And we have to always remember that with going with the truth, there's zero compromise. That is the way of Torah. That is what the Frierdiker Rebbe taught us. That's what the words mean. Azoi unitandish. Of course, a person has a Shulchan Aruch, and this case is we say Bamed Dvar Mamurim. But azoi unitandish means, again, the person who's obsessed and consumed and permeated and saturated with one concept, Ratzon Hashem. He understands azoi unitandish is whatever the Eibishter wants. And I'm obsessed to make sure to know exactly what the Eibishter wants. Like some Chassidim say, if they would imagine they're standing in front of the Rebbe, and they would have to answer to the Rebbe, then you'll also come to the right conclusion. So let us be inspired by the work of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and remember that the opposition and the arguments come from all quarters, from a Bilam, from an Amalek, from a Banshak, who says he's Kodesh, and he comes up with who knows what. But you have to remember, Yira v'ava, Nasa koydem l'nishma, Yirosoi kedemes l'chachmasei, and that's how you'll be liberated above whims and whimsies and moods and the wind shifts, but you stick strong as from Habun Oim, Faltmer Sharapunten, and the Eibische should help that from the Geula of Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tammuz, B'schus from the Baal Yema Geula, the Frierdiker Rebbe, we should come to the Geula Mitzvah Shleima, take it from Yad, Mamish, posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, your man in Melbourne.